to talk to you about the conditions of roads, especially in our province. Okay, my watch says it's 10 o'clock. Can we start? We can unmute. Hey, colleagues, good day to all of media present here today. We've got media present physically and also media that is present online. Welcome to you all. Also to our staff members present here today, as well as all of the representatives from the various provinces. We also have online our president, Jaco Minnaar, he is online today. And then we also have our vice president, Nicole Jansen, physically present here today from the Northern Cape. Nicole, if you can just raise your hand so that people can just know who you are. And then we've got our provincial leaders and representatives online. There is Deirdre Carter right at the back. Deirdre from Limpopo, if you can just raise your hand. Thank you. And then we've got Mohammed Katwa from the Cane Growers Association, Mohammed. There. And then online, we've got various provincial leaders, Sandy Lamarck from Konalu, also Jack Almer from the Free State, Jannie Stradum from the Western Cape, and then I know there's people also from the Eastern Cape that is also online. So a wide spectrum of people that are online. In front, I'm Christo van der Rede. I'm the Executive Director at Agri SA. I've got on my right-hand side our Chief Economist, Kulani Suweya, and Kulani will do the presentation from an economic perspective. Then on my left, I've got Lebogang Tusha. She is heading up our Labour Centre of Excellence, and she will speak to you about the impact these roads have on local communities, on workers' communities, and how it impacts also on their lives. And then also on my far left, I've got Kobus van Zyl. Kobus is heading up our Centre of Excellence for Economics. Welcome to you all, and if I've missed out on everyone, on anybody, then please let me to also give recognition to you. Then some of the other staff members present here today is Tia right at the back. Tia is our media liaison officer. Tia, if you can just wave at us.
Morning, everybody.
Yes, great. And then also I've got Marlu on my left-hand side, and there's Nalkut here. And then I've got some other provincial representatives present in the meeting. Can I just get an indication from Mpumalanga?
Yes, Jan Du Plessis from Mpumalanga.
Welcome, sir. And then also from Limpopo. Willem, also welcome to you all. So, colleagues, let me just quickly focus on what this media conference is all about. Today's media conference will focus on the state of rural and provincial roads. Nothing more and nothing less. Roads present the economic arteries of any society. It enables goods to move from farms to markets and from markets to consumers. ASA's biggest role is to ensure food security for all. But you cannot ensure food security for South Africans if our roads remain in a deplorable state. Roads are critical because roads not only play a role in terms of bringing about food security, but it also plays a huge role in terms of the development of rural communities. It brings tourism, it brings development to rural areas where the poorest of the poor are trying to eke out a living. The roads transform rural societies. It brings investment to rural areas. It creates jobs. It lifts people out of poverty. But more importantly, it brings economic freedom. So often we talk about empowerment, we talk about economic freedom. But if we do not have the roads to stimulate a process of economic development, then that economic freedom that we all yearn for will remain just a far-fetched dream. More so, it brings economic empowerment to millions of South Africans who remain trapped in poverty, underdevelopment, and despair. So today is the start of a national campaign by Agri SA to continue raising this issue of roads, because without roads, our economic development will remain stagnant, and we will not be able to bring about the economic fulfillment that many of our citizens yearn for. So on that note, I'm going to ask my colleague and our Chief Economist, Kulani Sawea, to address the House from an economic perspective. Kulani, over to you.
Thank you, Christian.
Oh, sorry, can we just move the mic?
Oh, sorry. Fine.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone, to all our colleagues in media houses in the house as well as online. So as the Economic Center of Excellence, we went about a study and a survey just to collect the information on just the state of the roads from our provincial affiliates. This was done through a various number of consultations and surveys through that particular chamber. And the survey was initially initiated to determine the impact of deteriorating road infrastructure on the sector. I must say the findings were dire, and it points to the enormous cost of South Africa's poor road maintenance for a proper functioning and growth of the sector. The survey did reveal that participating farmers relied on road transportation to move on average 94% of their produce. Average participants transported an estimated 23 million worth of agricultural produce by road in the last financial year for a combined total of more than 7.1 billion. From the survey, we found that 13% of the respondents relied on road transportation weekly, while more than 87% relied on the roads daily. And this explains why 69% of the respondents had at some point attempted to fix the affected roads themselves. Respondents also on average incurred repair and other related costs of more than 200,000 per participant. While this may be affordable for the biggest sector players in this regard, it is untenable for South Africa's small-scale farmers. On the survey, we found that all but 2 respondents experienced operational challenges because of the state of our roads, with an estimated average of 16% in turnover losses during the last financial year. The survey included participants from the 5 worst affected provinces, of which 19% were in horticulture, 30% in agronomy, and 51% in animal production. Now, the consequences of the challenges relating to the deteriorating roads are varied and are costly for South Africa's food producers. Costs incurred range from engine and trailer damage to shorter vehicle lifespan and accidents. The increased transportation and maintenance costs ultimately affect the consumers, and determining how much the consumers will pay and how fresh they will receive their produce. Now, all this constrains the potential of the sector to contribute to South Africa's GDP and employment, of which my colleague will also elaborate on. The sector also already contributes about 128 billion to GDP, but this can be even higher. This potential is illustrated by the fact that the sector was one of the few to increase employment in the last quarterly labor force statistics. But this potential cannot be fulfilled without determined and urgent action to address the problem of transportation infrastructure. As Agri SA will be therefore sharing this data with the Presidency and the Investment and Infrastructure Office within the Presidency, and calling on government to join with the sector in addressing these issues. This survey has demonstrated to us and to the broader community that the resilience and dedication of the farmers remains in the forefront to have a continued outperformance in the broader economy despite the immense challenges. And rising input costs and the nation's food producers have persisted even at immense personal costs to show how unsustainable that the situation is in. As Agri SA, we therefore stand ready to cooperate with government to ensure that we give our farmers the best chance of success, and in the process ensure the future food security of South Africa. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you, Kulani. We will also make the presentations available online, so you will have access to all the data. I think that will also help you to inform whatever you're going to share with the public out there. So we will now ask our labor desk to also share a few thoughts with you. Over to you, Lebogang.
Thank you, Christian. Good morning to everybody that's joining us today.
As advised, I'm Lebogang Tusha from the Center of Excellence for Labor and Development, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to chip in into this important topic. I think we can forget about our conversations on accelerating job creation and the rural economy when we have not invested substantially in the basic foundation of this growth, which is our rural infrastructure development. The relationship between infrastructure development and employment, extending this to poverty reduction, has been well documented by organizations such as the ILO and the World Bank. Functioning roads are at the core of economic growth and rural upliftment for our farming communities. In times wherein our unemployment rate is at all-time high, we cannot afford the state of our roads being an Achilles heel to income opportunities and job generation. Direct impact of improved roads on employment can be created during the construction and maintenance of these roads by using the local resources of our people and material within that local community to boost our job creation goals. Indirectly, the improved roads create an asset within that very same community for income and employment opportunities for those in the community and those seeking to seek other employment opportunities outside. This result can not only be expanded to the opportunities of selling products or finding work, but also increasing productivity and profits for the development and provide for our rural poor. Roads are vital to our rural communities when it comes to the basic services to improve their livelihoods and the reduction of inequality. Access to healthcare services, educational services, are human rights entrenched in our constitution and a role that our farmers have been playing a huge role in as they stand in as proxy. As said in the words of a World Bank report, roads are the arteries through which the economy pulses. By linking producers to markets, workers to jobs, students to schools, and sick people to hospitals, this shows us that roads are vital to any developmental agenda or job creation plan. We cannot continue to lock our rural communities in cycles of poverty and inequality by not improving the ecosystem in which they find themselves in, together as our rural people, as our farm workers, and those in our rural areas. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Lebogang. A very, very powerful statement. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have an online presentation by Dr. Jack Armour. He is from Free State Agriculture, and they've also provided us with a report which we will make available to you. Over to you, Jack, and welcome at our media conference this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I see are the slides available? Can I?
Yes. Yeah, Jack, if you can just speak up also, it will be very good. And then people in the room can also hear clearly what you have to say. Let me just check. You ready to go? Jack, over to you.
Thank you very much. So in the report that Agri SA has compiled, a lot of detail has already been put out there of the impact of the roads issues. What I'm going to focus on is the systemic impact, or the systemic issues within the department and working with government itself. So firstly, I've got some engineering reports on the gravel roads, but I'll go over them very briefly. I've got some photos of the tar roads and the systemic issues over there, but I'll focus on the systemic issues, and then the proposed solutions. I think one can read in the full report, but for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on these systemic issues. As Lebogang said, it's been well documented, the issue of roads. Even Adam Smith here in The Wealth of Nations said that good roads link communities together. Here's another quote of: an efficient road system gives a country a competitive edge in moving goods economically. So that is well documented. But this quote also says it's a little bit difficult to quantify the real economic impact of good roads. And well done to Agri SA, and thank you for your attempt of doing this. Very not all the farmers obviously have responded to the questionnaire and the survey, and I think the impact is actually much bigger than what we are showing. So one of the engineering reports over there says these are the problems with the roads. It's the berms, the roads are graded badly, there's bridges on the side of the road, so in essence, the road becomes a river. So there's no pick and shovel crew diverting the water off the roads. And that's what is the start of all these road problems. The culverts that are blocked, there's no maintenance of those culverts, no regraveling, the base course, the big rocks and stones in the roads, the potholes and the gullies that form in the gravel roads. And the reasons for this are inexperienced or insufficient grader operators. And then the logistics also of these graders working on the roads, where they're supposed to achieve 12 kilometers a day. In the past, the grader operators used to tow a caravan and they used to camp along the side of the road. Nowadays, they clock in at 8 o'clock, they go and fill up with diesel, and then it's already 9 o'clock, and then they race to the point where they're going to start grading, and then they race to get their 12 kilometers done in a day, and then they race to get back at 4 o'clock to clock off again. So there's no proper monitoring and control and performance appraisal of this work that's being done on the gravel roads. And then, as I've also said, there's no pick and shovel ground crew, as there was in the past, that open up these waterways and unblock the culverts. Now, in a country where we've got so much unemployment, we can't understand why these jobs aren't being filled. They're budgeted for, the department's supposed to have these jobs, but they're not employing these people. Here's another engineering report, also raising the same issues of stormwater problems, insufficient crossfalls on the road, rutting, exposed culverts, all that kind of stuff. And also this engineer said all of the problems identified and listed above are as a result of poor and insufficient road maintenance. So the problem of our roads, the department likes to say, and the government likes to say, it's because of the flooding, because of the high rainfall. That's not the problem. The problem is the roads weren't maintained. If they were well maintained, then the high rainfall wouldn't have had such a problem. So in the full report, you can see all these kind of problems, and these aren't the worst cases. These are the starting of the bad roads. There's much worse pictures that are coming in the other presentations and that the other departments have made available. There's rocks on the road. There's the culverts that you can see have been clearly exposed and graded open by the grader operators. The lack of the wearing gravel course on the road. A well-graded and well-compacted gravels do not present much gravel loss. So if the road is well maintained and compacted, there shouldn't be a problem. Here's the conclusion and recommendations of the engineering report. I'm not going to go over that, but there it says the general condition of Free State roads are in a very poor condition, and that we know. It is unsafe to use the roads, and the likelihood of accidents which could result in serious injury or loss of life is high. These are the roads that our farmers, the food producers of this country, are expected to ride on daily, to take the kids to school, the farm workers' kids to get to school, for clinics, police patrolling the rural safety, to drive on these roads, to check on the safety of farmers in rural areas, clinics to get to the rural areas. So the lack of maintenance on roads is evident, and it is the result of poor condition of the roads due to poor maintenance and repairs. I'll reiterate that. Once again, this is what happens to roads because there aren't the pick and shovel people, the systemic issues, those people at ground level that are supposed to unblock the drains and repair the broken drains. Here's pictures of the cost of doing business, profitability, when trucks get stuck on the road. This truck, for example, no other vehicles can get past this truck until it gets towed out. So everybody's now standing on the road, late to get to school. Milk lorries are waiting to get their milk delivered that rot while we're waiting to get these trucks pulled out of this mud. But this happens every day on a farmer's life, especially when it's raining, to navigate the roads. I mean, if we look at our tar roads, I'm not going to show too many horror pictures, but these are just some of the example of the tar roads. This R59 Deelsville-Hertzogville, Tweespruit Excelsior Road, Vicksburg-Voorheesburg Road. These are important roads that link rural communities to mining areas, that link tourism routes here in Vicksburg, agricultural routes, getting agricultural produce from the farms to the cooperatives and the processors. I mean, if we look at this Vicksburg Road, these are the police cars riding on the wrong side of the road, just to try and find some road surface that is drivable. You can't go more than 20 kilometers on these roads. They're unnavigable. The R30 has been in the news a lot recently. It's a small section of road. It's only about 200 meters that has been flooded by a pan that the Department of Roads has built up so that it can be passable. But there's tremendous amount of accidents on this road because road users also don't obey the signs. So the fault is not just the department, but one of the systemic issues is that the budget dries up here in December, and then there's no budget to pay for road signs and 24-hour RAGO controls. So that's why accidents often happen. But it's very important for this road to be kept open for heavy vehicles, that the crops that are coming off the lands can get to the silos. Because if the farmer can't get his crop off the land, he's paid for a contractor to come and harvest. That contractor, if he can't work, he's going to move to the next farm, and then that farmer is going to experience losses with his crops. So there was an arrangement made that the heavy trucks could continue on the road, which was perfectly safe for the heavy trucks. But then small car users take the gap, and they also try and go over this road, which is technically closed for them, and that's when the accidents happen. So the fault is also with road users, but also sometimes not enough signage, not enough controls on the roads. The other big issue, systemic issue, is very poor workmanship, and this can come down to often BEE contractors, people that aren't properly supervised. This was a road that was built by Setrade. It was reopened in November, and 2 months after, sorry, October, and 2 months afterwards in November, this photo was taken. A brand new road rebuilt, already showing potholes. This is unacceptable. The photo on the bottom far right is a brand new tarred surface where one can clearly see that after the flooding, this tar just peeled off the base layer because the bonding preparation that was supposed to take place between the base layer and the tar wasn't done properly because it wasn't supervised by consulting engineers. So in short, our tar roads are also life-threatening. Here's a school bus where, thank goodness, the pupils were already offloaded, but the driver unfortunately lost his life, a young teacher. This was tragic. This happened at the end of last year. There's many tragic photos that we get of lives that are lost on our roads that rural communities are forced to ride on. So something urgently needs to be done about this. So that is a background, and then very quickly, just the systemic issues. The book Gangster State clearly states that the Department of Police, Roads and Transport was at the center of Makashule's alleged capture scheme. The systemic issues, the budget is way too small to ever catch up to the backlog in repairs that are needed just to get our roads in a reasonable condition. The problem is we've got a top-heavy bureaucratic structure. And as I said, there's no budget from December except to pay salaries to actually do emergency repairs. So when we had flooding in the beginning of this year, as we had beginning of last year as well, this year a disaster was classified, and it made provision for departments to reallocate funds for disaster repairs and disaster help. Free State Agriculture put out in the media to the departments, please not to fund help in seeds and fertilizer for the farmers, but just to fix our roads, that those roads are navigable, that we can get the food to the silos, that the farmers can sell their products. And nothing was done in the Free State, nothing. There was no money made available to fix our roads that had washed away in the floods, even after disaster was classified. The road boards are no longer in existence because they were the road boards. So the road boards never came into being, and that's what made roads work in the past. Poor management and maintenance of the centralized yellow fleet, and I'll get to a slide quickly on that just now. The contractor development program, which our Premier is very proud of, and the extended public works program, they don't work because those people on the ground aren't supervised properly and aren't managed properly to do the work properly. They're not qualified engineers. There's no oversight, management, and quality control by independent consulting engineers. The department uses the internal district engineers. There's too much focus on politics and votes, job creation, gender and youth, instead of following a scientific and cost-effective professional engineering approach to fix our roads. The yellow fleet in Bloemfontein, a week ago, 30 graders are parked at the centralized yellow fleet. of those 30 graders, 26 have pistons through the engine blocks. In other words, they require huge major overhauls at a massive expense. So this can be the result of two things. One is total abuse of the grader through either incompetence or just a don't care attitude, or it's deliberate sabotage that the grader operator can sit at home and get paid while it takes 2 to 10 months for a grader to get a new engine. So here are the statistics from the government, provincialgovernment.co.za page, showing the top-heavy bureaucratic structure that the department has got. Too much staff at the top, and this is a result of the cadre deployment over the last 10, 15 years. The wage bill is about 30% of the total budget of the department, and the staff shortfall is in the region vicinity of about 200 people. And this is mostly those ground level people that are not getting employed, that are the pick and shovel people that need to do the work. And then, if one looks at the graph at the bottom, almost 70% of the salary wage bill goes to level 6 to 13 salary levels, and only 32% goes to levels 1 to 5. So there are a lot of managers being paid to manage, but there's no staff to do the work on the ground. So that's the core that Free State Agriculture has analyzed is the reason for the roads being so bad. So just very quickly, we have submitted a proposal as a solution. We submitted it in May to the department. We've had no response to this public-private partnership proposal, where the farmers have committed to work with government in the public and the private sector, the proper consulting engineers. So I just want to highlight this one block over here. The road condition surveys in the Free State, conducted in December 2011 already, so more than 10 years ago, indicated that the lack of preventative and programmed maintenance resulted in the overall condition of the road network deteriorating to an alarmingly low state. In 2017, the South African Institute of Civil Engineers scored the provincial paved roads a D, illustrating that they are at risk of failure. Provincial gravel roads were in a relatively worse condition and hence scored an F, which means unfit for purpose. So in 2017, the civil engineer profession classified our roads in the Free State as unfit for purpose. So what have the farmers been doing? Here's a lot of pictures and examples of farmers trying to fix the road themselves, doing emergency work, just that their wives and children and farm workers' wives and children don't have more accidents on these roads and get stranded on these roads. But this is not sustainable. The farmers cannot continue fixing the roads at their own cost, because it's tremendous costs in time, and it's a risk in standing out on those roads without all the proper equipment, and it's a tremendous cost in equipment that's needed to maintain these roads. Here, for example, the Harry Smith farmers a couple of weeks ago fixed a township entrance route because these farmers fetched a lot of their workers from this township, and it was just becoming impossible for their vehicles to access this township. So if the farmers couldn't access that township, the taxi associations actually asked the farmers, please come and help at the request of the traditional council. Some of the big agribusinesses have now bought their own graders to improve the access routes to the silos so that farmers don't get stuck in their heavy loaded vehicles when delivering crops to the silos. So some legal action and investigations are needed, accountability and monitoring and evaluation. The Auditor General's findings are always scathing on the roads department, but what is done about it? There's no accountability. We've spoken to forensic auditors, and they say, no, it's too costly and drawn out to do forensic audits on the department budgets. There needs to be a drastic investigation into staff restructuring, especially at the top, to establish an efficient and effective staffing structure. The other big issue on our roads that's just decimating our roads is manganese trucks. In other provinces, there's a dedicated budget to maintain roads where coal trucks are destroying the roads. We're calling for a dedicated budget from Treasury for maintenance of roads that are being destroyed by manganese trucks coming from the Northern Cape, going through the Free State to the harbours in Richards Bay and Tupi, and also to reroute these trucks and to force them to stay on roads that are suitable for these heavy trucks. Because at the moment, they're taking small by routes, back routes to avoid the bad roads. And also, very importantly, to look at how we can get more bulk transported by rail. If these actions aren't taken, and farmers have already been forced to take drastic action. Farmers and taxi associations are already holding hands. Last year, the Vicksburg community blocked the R26 and demanded that the MEC of Roads and Transport come and visit them, and they refused. They blocked that road from 7 in the morning till 7 at night until the MEC arrived. The farmers have taken to the media, to the social media, to the news media, and they're saying enough is enough, but it just seems to be falling on deaf ears. So please, we make an urgent plea to the media to help us, but also to get the message through to government. And thank you for Agri SA for taking this message to the Office of the Presidency and to the Infrastructure Committee, that we can urgently address our roads issues in the Free State. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, that was Dr. Jack Armour from Agri SA. Thank you, Jack, for a very insightful and detailed report. May I now give the floor to Deirdre Carter. She's the CEO of Limpopo Agriculture. Deirdre, if you can step forward to the podium.
Thank you, Christo. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Right. Well, road infrastructure is the life and the blood of our economy. As a nation, we face multiple crises. Economic stagnation and failing infrastructure constitute both two of these crises. We take heed in this regard of the President's most recent solar address, in that the path we choose now will determine the course of future generations. That we need a new consensus. The new consensus, and I quote, born out of a common understanding of our current challenging situation and a recognition of a need to address the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. A consensus which recognizes the state must create an environment in which the private sector can invest and unleash the dynamism of the economy. Agriculture is an important and strategic part of this new vision. Apart from matters of governance and policy, well-maintained, functioning and expanding infrastructure and efficient and reliable services, be it harvest, roads, electricity, water, and municipal services, are prerequisites if this new consensus is to be realized. Yet, we are faced with crumbling and aged infrastructure and collapsing services that impact on our ability to continue to operate, let alone grow and expand and contribute to the national cause. So if we go to the failing road infrastructure in Limpopo and its impact on the farming sector, is now of catastrophic proportions. I'm not going, the full report will be made available, but I'm just highlighting a few of the roads at the moment. If we look at the all-day Swartwater Road for R572, Bosveld, the collapse of this road has been highlighted for more than a decade by the Bosveld Farmers Association to no avail. We have been meeting with the Premier. We've even, I'm going to show you a video now, that video was even highlighted in a meeting with the Premier with a hall full of people. Straight after that, we had an MEC that was actually replaced, but to date, nothing has happened.
Hi Deirdre, this is the road, the R572 between Swartwater and Maastrom. I'm just making a short video here in order for you to see. If you can see from this side, the gravel, this is where the tar is supposed to be, but there is hardly any surface left. On this side, it's out. So if it's not for local government, for the municipality that put this gravel on the road, there would have been nothing. The potholes is very deep and it's impossible to drive on this. It's dangerous. There's a lot of accidents on this road. So if you can see, this is what's left of a piece of tar on the road. And this is just one stretch. The whole road for about 70 kilometers looks like this. So this is desperate. We need assistance. We need the people out here to come and help us. Thank you.
going to go
Right,
through the
right.
whole video. I'm not going to go through the whole video, but I can say to you, I traveled that road last year, November, and unfortunately, my insurance is not even covering the damage, okay? But I ended up with my own personal vehicle with 74,000 rands damage. New vehicles are not lasting on the road. I can show you photos, and my report will show you photos with the SAPS specifically, their own vehicles, they're tired, but there's no budget, that the farmers are actually helping them to fix their vehicles. This is really a major, major problem. I'm just still on the previous slide before the video. Now, many transport companies that have serviced the Bosveld farming community no longer do so. They say that the expenses is far too high on their vehicles, therefore they cannot service the area. This also led to Tiger Brands having closed down their all-day depot, resulting in a 3,000 ton drop in, for example, tomato production. That is just one of the examples. Then if we go to the R576 Springbok Vlakte, the next slide. The collapse of this road has been an ongoing concern to the Springbok Vlakte Boerevereniging Farmers Association, with little to no response from government. Willem will also talk about it a little bit later, but meetings with the province, meeting with the municipality, just nothing was happening. Apart from the daily farming operation concern, farmers complain of the damage to produce on the way to the market and their equipment. If we go to the N11 Agri School, the road forms an important road for the transportation of citrus, cotton, tobacco, grapes, and fresh produce. Farmers complain of damage to their export produce. If you have a look at Agri SA, they have the same. Also, big citrus area, export. But look at the condition of the road. Crates are broken. Island Road specifically is something where we have had so many meetings. And if you look at that, exactly what Lebo was saying, workers are being impacted, rural communities are being impacted. If we go to Georges Valley, look at the road looks like in Georges Valley. If we look at the R528, accidents are happening continuously. You see what's got to happen is the guy needs to be on the wrong side of the road to try and miss all of these potholes. Kingdom Road. These are just a few of the roads. We've got many photos. I've got a list. The presentation will be made available as well. But you can see this, 2 pages with listing of roads. From the R25 alphabetically, the D21 Sikororo, AH3 Agata, the Wagendrift Road. So there's a list, but hold your seats. That's not the only list, it continues. So the N11, the P43, P24, like I said, there's just basically all the roads are in a state of disrepair. Now, there's other issues as well. If we look at town planning, uncontrolled, unplanned development alongside major thoroughfare routes. These roads now are being turned into service roads with a proliferation of informal ingresses and egresses, causing safety issues. Resultant snowballing of speed humps are causing damage to transported goods, produce, and is slowing down thoroughfare traffic, which makes filtering easier. Just to give you an example, you're on the N11, the houses are built right onto this national route. Now they've got to put the speed bumps up. What happens once the speed bumps are up? Okay, the traffic is slowed down. By the time the truck is over the speed bumps, the canvases have been split and some of the stock has been removed. So continuity and political leadership is another issue. There are many of these municipal areas where agreements are being reached on priority road issues, only for the election to be there and the next minute changes in leadership and a loss of continuity. So this is really the issues that we're sitting with. On the systemic issues, I'm not really going to go in much because Dr. Jack Armour raised the issues, and it's also issues that we experience. So when we go to collateral damage, Apart from the direct impact into farming operations and continuous viability of the sector, the collapse of road infrastructure creates collateral damage, including the loss of life, which we see daily. We've got a farmer that's just lost drivers over the weekend again on one of the horrific roads. Slow is anyhow safety and security responses. Police cannot get to you. If there is an issue, they cannot get to you. If you need an ambulance, they cannot get to you. Then, as I've mentioned, you've got filtering from trucks, the impact of poor roads on employees and the entire rural community. The poorest of the poor are the ones that's paying the most for this. If we have a look at the Gogo who is living on a pension, how does she actually use public transport? How do they get into town? How do they get to the doctors and hospitals? That's a major issue. There's impact on other sectors. For example, I think Krista mentioned, tourism, mining, access to government and other services, and cross-border trade, to name but a few. Now, Tia did say, I only have 3 minutes, so our full report will be made available to all. But we would like to take this opportunity to invite you to visit our province in order to experience the challenges that we face. So, telephone number, email address is on the screen. Now, thank you.
Giselle, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now give an opportunity to our colleague in KZN, Sandy Lamar, who is the CEO of Quanale, to also share the report from Quanale. Sandy, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I trust you can all hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Right, so just to introduce Quanale, we are a fully integrated organisation representing the interests of farmers and rural landowners in KwaZulu-Natal. We have a particular focus on, so I should get that out the way, on women and youth and rural entrepreneurship, and we have a strong commodity and business affiliation which contributes to our collective value that we have in the province. So, right. So a little while ago, Quanale undertook an extensive survey. We had 100% district response rate to the survey, and we asked a number of key questions. They are all contained in the report that we have submitted. So one of the simple questions that we asked was rank your local road conditions in your district. And it's quite clear to see that 76% of our respondents indicated that conditions are very poor and in a very serious condition. And this clearly results in the hampering of the movement of goods and services in rural and agricultural areas. It directly impacts the economy of that community, of the broader district, of the province. It increases the cost of doing business. It hinders the production of food and fiber. And I was asked a question this morning on radio, how or why? And when you cannot get a milk truck off a farm, clearly that will start to impact on the production of food and fiber, for example. It prevents employment opportunities. It impedes the safe and secure passage for all. It obstructs the ability to move goods and services safely. And it stifles opportunities for economic growth. So this picture here gives a really easy look at what some of these situations are that occur. So life-threatening potholes, one of the most critical areas, uneven surfaces. In the Limpopo videos, we saw that. The unmarked entries into the road, the shoulders, road shoulders lacking gravel, for example, alien species invasion along the roadway. There are so many specific items that have been identified through the research that we've conducted with our members, and it just helps to demonstrate this in this press conference that we're having today. So we also went and asked what are the specific strategic uses, and I think this is critical to take note of, is that the roads that our farmers, our members, our rural users are using are often trade routes, they're agricultural routes. I mentioned the food security issue, and I directly link that to the agricultural routes, to the mills, to the dairy, the feed trucks. Jack Armour mentioned the school routes, the tourist routes, commuting route for town and business. So when we go and analyze what those roads are used for in our rural areas, you can see it's multifaceted. So I'm not going to go through the list of roads, but in our survey that we undertook, as I said, 100% response rates across the province, we've got a whole lot of roads that we've been have identified and have been categorized into the different states, the worst, second, third, fourth, fifth worst, etc. So just to take another point, we looked at the protests, and it's really interesting to take note that the protests in areas that are taking, in our rural areas, are having a significant impact at the end of the day. In 2020, Kwanalu conducted a survey, and we asked specific questions. We also looked at various research that had been taken by municipalities, etc., around protests. And one of the main reasons for protests was, yes, water, housing, and roads. And one has to start asking the question, when do we get listened to? When are the voices heard when it comes to these issues? I just put in this presentation some of the points that had been raised at the time when we did the survey around why service delivery was being highlighted to the extent that it is. And I think if you go and look at the service, the influencing factors around the protests, empty promises. Politicians already, our speakers this morning, have raised all these concerns. And I think it's something that we really need to take forward and address into the future. So again, our respondents, we said to them, are road repair contractors providing a sufficiently good quality service? Well, clearly not. 79% of our respondents said, no, they are not. We also asked the question because for us it's really important to understand what our members' views are, what our farmers' views are. Does your association have a relationship with the overseeing contractors? Sadly, no, and it will come up again in a minute when we look at our solutions going forward. So Dr. Jack Armour mentioned the Rural Road Transport Forum, and we asked our communities again to understand exactly what's going on. And again, no, those rural road transport forums aren't working. I think if you took the 34% unknown, you could add the two together, because really those are not operational to the extent that they should be operational. We asked, have interactions taken place with the association? So many of our associations are trying to have a relationship, a working relationship with the municipality, with the Department of Transport. But I think really what is of concern is when you look at the question that we asked then is, has there been a response to these concerns? And 76% of respondents said, no, they have not been addressed. So again, I think this morning has been quite an expose of photos of what our areas look like. The top left, again, a milk truck that was across the road could not leave the farm, could not get to the distribution point. Bottom left, I know SA Kangaroos is present there this morning and also going to speak about, here's a sugar truck that's overturned. It's just shocking to see the state of the rural roads in our province. So just to take to another point and say, well, what are those solutions that we need to look to make sure that we can make a change with respect to these issues? So we are proposing a proactive community-based approach to road infrastructure and revive the rural road transport forums. Let us all sit around the table together again. That collective action starts to talk about or talk to the budgets, the resources. Let's consult with each other and ensure that we have a collective approach to dealing with the issue. We need to prioritize the critical economic nodes, the high risk areas. the critical trade areas in particular, our M3, for example. And I deviate here to another point that we have raised over some time during the unrest last year that you will all clearly remember. One of our major challenges was on our roads in this province, that we were unable to move goods and services. And so there definitely needs to be a far greater focus on the critical economic trade routes. How do we protect those? How do we ensure that those routes are operating at their optimum? We need to ensure that our road network provides a safe and secure passage, that it is effective, efficient, and it provides the movement of goods and services that we require in our agricultural areas. And lastly, just to say, the opportunity for employment and economic growth is fundamentally what lies behind the concerns that we raised today. Our agricultural sector, our rural sector, needs to be able to continue growing and produce food for this nation. Chairperson, I thank you for the opportunity today.
A very insightful and a very detailed report. The detailed report from Konami will also be made available to everyone. So colleagues, we are now going to focus in-house. We won't be that very long, but perhaps give also the chairperson of our Economic Center of Excellence and Opportunity to share a few thoughts on the state of roads in Agri Northwest. Kobus.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I think the reports that's been tabled by Konalo, Limpopo, as well as Free State, especially Free State, who've got similar conditions, are exactly the same as what we have in the Northwest Province. What I can also say is that we have also similar experience in the sense that you have meetings with the provincial authorities, you have it at local level, but at the end of the day, nothing happens. And I think if one talk about consensus and solutions for the future, we need to rethink the models that's been employed during the past years, and we really have to rethink the way that we approach the future with regards to our road infrastructure. Clearly, the model has not been working well. You've seen the state of the roads, and a big concern is the unresponsiveness that we have from government. I think if we have to reach consensus, there needs to be other parties involved as well, and they need to get to the table and respond to that, because it's really affecting the poor of the poor the most. So I don't want to add any other issues, because I think it was really well highlighted by the other province, and at our province it's exactly the same. It is included in the survey, and our report is also available.
Thank you, Kobus. Let us quickly have Lyon Du Plessis. He is the Deputy President. He's from Mpumalanga Agriculture. Lyon, over to you.
Leon. But you spell it wrong. Morning to all. I might repeat a few things that my colleagues have said, but I think the more you repeat something, hopefully somebody will start to listen. Mpumalanga Agriculture is the provincial affiliate of Agri SA in Mpumalanga, and although I'm the Vice President for the Highveld region, I'm here today representing all our members in the Lowveld as well as in the Highveld. Most of you are probably aware of the important contribution of the agricultural sector to the economy of any province. The sustainability of agriculture in Mpumalanga is highly dependent on a reliable road infrastructure, not only for primary production, but also for the entire value chain. First and most important reason for a proper and well-maintained road infrastructure is the safety of our producers, their families, and also our farm workers and their families. Our agricultural producers are further highly dependent on proper roads, both tar and gravel, to receive input material like fertilizer and seed, animal feed, and diesel, and then also to get our our produce to the market like grain, fresh produce, livestock, poultry, and wool. Partners in the value chain are evenly so dependent on proper road infrastructure to provide a much-needed service to our producers on farm level. Just to give you a better understanding on why we are dependent on proper roads, I would just like to give you a few examples. Although our province in Mpumalanga is small, we only cover 6.5% of South Africa's total area. The farmers of our province provide 24% of the national maize production on about 515,000 hectares. On average, a farmer needs approximately 80 litres to produce 1 hectare of maize. That totals 41 million litres of diesel that needs to be transported by tankers on our roads, which is about 1,360 separate loads. Without this, sustainable production of maize will not be possible. Furthermore, an average of 1 ton of fertilizer is needed to produce a hectare of maize. This adds up to another 17,000 separate loads to deliver the fertilizer to our farmers. The expected crop for the current season is 3.4 million tons of maize, and it needs to be transported within the next 3 months by approximately 170,000 trucks and wagons from the farms to the marketplace. A substantial number of these tons will need to be transported for a second or third time. To emphasize the load on the roads, this figure only refers to the transport of maize, excluding all the other farming produce in our province. 2 million kilograms of wool need to be transported in our province annually, and almost 5 million broilers must be moved to abattoirs on a weekly basis. 8,000 heads of cattle are offered on a monthly basis at auctions, and while 500,000 weaners are transported on our roads. The calculation therefore adds up to another 25,000 essential truckloads on our roads. Mpumalanga is the largest producer of macadamia nuts in the country, with 2.4 million trees, adding to another 8,000 or more trucks every year on our roads. This reflects an annual turnover of almost 2.5 billion rand to the economy of our province. And sugarcane adds up to about 4 million tons that needs to be transported on our roads. Therefore, with these few examples, we would like to emphasize the need for proper provincial road infrastructure to ensure a sustainable agricultural sector in Mpumalanga. We have been pleading with the Department of Public Works for several years to repair and maintain these roads on a regular basis without any notable improvement. During November 2019, we provided the Department of Public Works with a list of roads in an extremely bad state, but unfortunately, the situation has only deteriorated since then. We have enormous potential on the fields in terms of the expected harvest this season, but unfortunately, the transport companies are warning us that they might not be able to send their trucks to collect our harvest. The impact of this situation on the country's food supply can be catastrophic. A substantial number of the roads in our province are in such a bad condition that it can be classified as life-threatening for road users. Children of our farm workers at commercial farms are transported by school buses on these roads. Government services like the SAPS and mobile clinics from the Department of Health are affected in a negative way due to the bad and often inaccessible condition of our roads. In many cases, like other provinces, the farmers are forced to maintain the public roads themselves, just to be able to continue farming. However, and I would like to emphasize this, our farmers cannot pay tax and pick up the bill for maintenance of road infrastructure. I'm pleased to announce that the Department of Public Works in Mpumalanga recognized our request to establish a working relationship, and we were invited to attend a meeting early in March this year. And I've received some feedback from our executive manager who attended this meeting that he sees potential for the establishment of a long-term sustainable working relationship between Mpumalanga Agriculture and the Provincial Department of Public Works on a local and district level. We will monitor the progress and we will keep you, the press and Agri SA, informed on the progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. That was also very insightful. That report will also be made available. Let us now go to Agri Northern Cape, Nicole Jansen, who will also share the perspectives from Agri Northern Cape. Nico is the president of Agri Northern Cape and is also the vice president here at Agri SA. So I think people will always wonder, okay, gentleman is the vice president at Agri SA, but he's the president at Agri Northern Cape. Agri SA is an organization of organizations. In other words, we've got 9 provincial affiliates belonging to Agri SA. We've got approximately 25 commodity organizations being part of Agri SA, and then we've got more than 60 big corporations that are also part of Agri SA. So Agri SA represents an ecosystem of various organizations who are all autonomous in their own right, but they obviously are part of the Agri SA family, where we use Agri SA as a conduit to address issues of national concern. So just to explain how these things are, are all integrated. Nico, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. That's nice English words addressed to a Northern Cape farmer. Marno, can you please share the Agri SA report, the photos of the Northern Cape while I'm speaking, please? Thank you, Marno. Agri Northern Cape has established a good working relationship with our Provincial Department of Public Works and Transport. The outcome of these engagements still don't have the desired progress that we are looking for. So the bad state of roads in the Northern Cape have a huge negative impact on the profitability of the agricultural sector. It adds up to transport costs, have a limitation on service delivery within the private sector. Costs, input products can't reach their end destiny, and transporters become more and more unwilling to pick up products from farm level. Ambulances can't reach persons in need, and police service are limited due to the bad conditions of our roads. So the Northern Cape contains 2.2% of the country's population, but is the biggest province and has nearly 26,000 kilometers of gravel roads, plus the tar road component. So the low population lead to inadequate funding from the National Department of Roads. Department Public Works and Transport in the Northern Cape stated in a provincial meeting that the Northern Cape has a 2 billion rand budget cut in the current financial year. Funding is a concern to address maintenance of roads. Gravel roads need re-graveling. Blading is of no use and impractical in many instances due to top surface that is depleted and non-existent. Dig up the sub-foundation and uncompacting the bottom rough material. So the Northern Cape has a growing mining sector without the supporting infrastructure to move the raw material from the mining area in the western parts of the Northern Cape to the Eastern Cape harbour of Uberta. Put the road infrastructure under huge pressure with measured volumes of tipper trucks of 1,500 per day in both directions. Manganese have a high density that measures 7.4 tons per cubic. Causes easily overloading. That is the highest contributor to road destruction, much more than high volume traffic volumes. There's only one scale to weigh these trucks by the traffic department. It is on the mining route and situated on the N12 near Kimberley. Unfortunately, this weigh bridge is being vandalized and not in use. So the Northern Cape roads fall under the jurisdiction of the Northern Cape Department of Public Works and Transport, with 5 regional offices through the province. Maintenance is not the responsibility of municipalities like in the rest of the country. So the fleet of yellow machinery has to be hired from the entity or government garage within the same department, utilizing the regional budget for a provincial structure. This practice ends up rotating money within the department by hiring machinery from themselves, machinery that is mostly in bad shape. And when breakdowns occur, the machinery have to be returned to Kimberley over vast distances without uplifting the hiring expenses. Now, this is due to inefficient budget allocations to the entity to do the repairs. The result in no pressure on the entity for timely service delivery and repairs that lead to non-payment by the regions. So at the end, everything came to a standstill and no operations can be fulfilled. Total inefficient way, spending the majority of the budget on rotating funds within the department without any service delivering, end up utilizing money on fixed costs, overhead spending and personnel costs, and not operational spending. So what should be done? Better budget distribution formula is more fair to the Northern Cape province should be developed on a national level, supporting the Northern Cape vast distances of roads that have to be maintained. Dedicated route, or rather a main route for the mining sector from Hotel to Hanover, should be transferred to Sanral. That is better positioned to maintain such important main roads. More scale should be implemented to control overloading. The private sector is willing to assist in the short term with public-private partnerships in this regard. The total inefficiency in terms of obtaining and access to yellow machinery should be addressed as soon as possible. More public participation, private contractors should be used to reach targets on budget within timeframes. More efficient, dedicated personnel on obtaining service delivering targets should be strived to employed and trained. The improved work ethics and solution-driven, target-reaching and problem-solving work environment should be established within the department and will stretch the limited budget enormously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for a very concise report. We will now go over to Willem van der Walt. Willem will give us a farmer perspective. He is also from Limpopo Agriculture, where he is an executive member. Willem, over to you.
Thank you, Christo. I think there's lots of things that I'm going to repeat of what the previous people said. I don't know where to start, at what portal I need to start. So let's go. Agriculture, but Agri SA members and other agricultural producers in South Africa provide the entire population with quality food for 12 months of the year. Summer, autumn, winter, and spring, with its own challenges. Over the past 24 months, during which the COVID-19 pandemic brought the country to a standstill, the farming sector made an outstanding contribution in sustaining the economy. Farming producers of meat, grain, fruit, vegetables, citrus, wine, and other farm products are mainly situated in rural areas across the country. This means they have to transport production inputs such as fertilizer, fuel, seed, etc., as well as their marketable products over long distances from suppliers and to consumers. For this purpose, they mostly use road transport because the rail network has become totally dysfunctional. We sien toe onthou met trots hul paaie op hulle eie eiendom, aangesien dit hulle eie verantwoordelikheid is. Vanaf die plaaswerk word provinsiale grondpaaie, teepaaie en soms munisipale paaie gebruik om aan te sluit by die nasionale hoofroetes. Toestand van die paaie vanaf die plaaswerk tot die verbruiker staan in 'n baie swak toestand. Grondpaaie is gewoonlik die eerste skakel vanaf die plaaswerk. Swak onderhoud aan die grys oppervlakte van die paaie vir ongeveer 25 jaar, is nou op so 'n punt dat produksie en die koste van produksie benadeel word. Brûe is verspoel, paaie is toegegroei, modderpoele het gevorm, tekens is weg, verwaarloos. Provinsiale padskrapers word onderhou nie. Personeel is nie goed opgelei nie om toerusting korrek te gebruik nie. Ek dink dit is wat baie sprekers reeds vir ons gesê het. Dit is die foto's wat ons daar gou kan kry. Ons kan aan. So ek foto's kry daar. Tar roads are full of potholes, and in some instances, road users have to drive on the side of the road because it is easier or safer. These tar roads were resealed many years ago to prevent moisture on the surface from penetrating the foundation of the road. White lines are no longer visible. T-junctions and off-ramps are overgrown with trees, grass, and endangering the lives of road users, including producers and workers in the general public. Je kan sien hoe daai padtekens toegegroei is onderste bo, veronderstel om 'n toegeeteken te wees daar. Net daar daai eerste fotootjie toe daar.
The one back.
The first one, that one,
Yeah.
that road was damaged early January. That's three months ago. You can go back there, it's still the same after a lot of reports. So the users, the farmers on the other side of that road, they took a road of about 30 kilometers longer to deliver the products. Munisipale paaie deur plattelandse dorpe is in sekere gevalle slegter as provinsiale paaie. Hierdie paaie is net so belangrik vir die landbou met produksie en bemarking van hulle produkte. Nasionale roetes word beter onderhou. Misdaad soos kapings, brandstigting, blokkades deur ongelukkige inwoners en publieke onrus op paaie is 'n baie groot probleem, aangesien produkte se aflewering vertraag of soms heeltemal gekanselleer word. Maintenance of infrastructure results in the following: delivering of products, production inputs is impossible or is delayed because contractors refuse to use the bad roads. Producers maintain costs. Maintenance costs for equipment and vehicles increase by double digits. The time of vehicles has increased, which means that production targets and objectives of farmers cannot be met. Delivery is delayed while processes and shipping agents' schedules cannot be complied with. This results in producers being earmarked as unreliable suppliers nationally and internationally. Fish products and livestock are subject to bruising, which has a negative impact on the grading of the product. Mortality of livestock occurs when trucks break down along these roads. Risks to road safety have increased dramatically because of blown tires when road users serve to avoid potholes, or sometimes have to stop on the road surface to replace a damaged tire. Primary producers, their families and personnel are exposed to these life-threatening conditions on a daily basis. Producente innoverende professionele sakelei in hulle besighede. Daarom staan hulle ook nie terug met noodherstelwerk aan grond en teerpaaie nie, sodat hulle ondernemings se produksie nie benadeel word nie. Hierdie herstelwerk is egter nie 'n plig nie. Hulle is dit heeltemal onwettig. Producente en die publiek wat dit doen, stel hulle bloot aan vervolging. Hoog hulle produksiekoste. Neem hulle fokus weg van hulle primêre besigheid, naamlik produksie van bemarkbare produkte. Hulle personeel bloot aan gevaarsituasies terwyl paaie onwettig herstel word. Such repairs are done in emergencies and without the permission of the responsible authorities. Users are also not compensated for such repairs. Following can be done to accommodate them. Definitely, them against prosecution should there be any consequences after repairs have been done. Acknowledge such repairs by way of tax concessions. Award contracts to affiliated farmer associations to maintain specific roads. These farmer associations can then appoint contractors to undertake the work. Administrative red tape on the part of the authority should be entirely eliminated to avoid additional pressure on producers in such a case. As sulke maatreëls toegepas word, moet die verantwoordelike owerheid nie vrygespreek word van hulle statutêre pligte rondom paaie en die onderhoud daarvan nie. By hulle plig. Wel daar goeie werkverhoudinge tussen produsente en personeel wat op die paaie werk is, het oneffektiewe bestuur van personeel, finansies, toerusting en administrasie die kapasiteit provinsiale paaie departemente so benadeel dat dit die hoofoorsaak is dat paaie in die huidige toestand verkeer. Oorvaar uitstekend met hulle primêre doel, naamlik volhoubare voedselproduksie. Nasionale en provinsiale regerings moet egter eienaarskap vat van hul verpligting om die padinfrastruktuur op die platteland te onderhou, te verbeter, sodat landbou sy werk kan doen wat sy hoofdoel is. Dankie vir toe.
Thank you very much to Willem, baie dankie. And thank you for sharing also a couple of thoughts on the role of farmers with regards to repairing roads. Now, I want to make it very clear, Agri SA does not want to shift the responsibility of fixing roads to farmers. It's not their job to fix them. Farmers are there to produce food and to get the economy of rural areas going. But in many instances where there's a need for emergency repairs, farmers are more than prepared to get involved. But you need to exonerate farmers from any liability that might come their way should they fix those roads. But that's where it's very important that local municipalities work hand in hand with your farmer organizations at grassroots level so that there's a good understanding in terms of the role that the farming sector can play. And if there's an engineer at municipal level that can sign off and obviously take any risk that might come out of that type of agreement to farmers, that the municipality take off that risk. So there's many ways to skin this proverbial cat. At the end of the day, it remains municipalities, remains the responsibility of municipalities, government, local governments to fix our roads. Without roads, there cannot be any economic growth. We cannot lift our people out of poverty. And we run various risks of becoming more food insecure and creating an environment where this investment is the order of the day as opposed to index funds. So on that note, let me also ask Dr. Mohammed Katwa from South African Cane Growers to also share a few thoughts with us. We're almost at the end of our program.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, I'm the last present here today, so everything needs to be said has been said already. But yeah, good morning, everyone, and peace be upon everyone. I think you can share the presentation. Okay. So you've seen all the pictures, you know what the roads are like. So I'm going to give you just a different perspective as to the importance from a sugarcane agricultural perspective of how important roads are and how widely roads are being used. And I'm sure other commodity organizations would share a similar message with you all. So it's just a perspective from one commodity, and we know there's so many others that are obviously as relevant as we are. Okay, so who is SA Cane Growers? SA Cane Growers is a non-profit company for the farmers, by the farmers. We represent the needs of all sugarcane farmers in South Africa, be it from small-scale growers all the way up to all commercial large-scale growers. Next, please. So to give a perspective of where sugarcane is grown in Africa, you can have a look at this map. We're all the way from south of KZN all the way into Mpumalanga, mostly along the coast because of climatic conditions. And that's where we now have 12 sugar mills. We used to have 14. In the last 2 years, 2 sugar mills have closed. And the cane still remains from those areas. They just get transported further. So that's where we are. And you can see the numbers of growers. Click. You can, and overall, the sugar industry in South Africa supports the livelihoods of 1 million people in South Africa. Okay, just to give you an understanding of how transport specifically contributes in terms of a farmer's overall production, SA Cane Growers has been conducting surveys for 95 years on these, and it's currently about 8% that is specifically cane that's being transported from the farms to the sugar mills. So a lot of other, obviously, roads are being used within the farms. I think specifically the 8% you see is cane being transported from the farms to the mills. Just give an aspect of where everything fits in together. So as Kulani mentioned at the start, we follow a similar path in the sugar industry. The 95% of sugarcane is transported from the farms to the mills on road. We do have a couple of areas where they use trams and railway, but it's very, very small. It used to be much bigger on railways prior, and yeah, wait for another day around railway and infrastructure on that. But so yeah, that's it. And if you can see the different types of operations that we use, from big 30 to 40 ton trucks to transport sugarcane, all the way down to the small tractors who are close by from farms to the mills. So there's a wide range of different equipment that's used to transport sugarcane throughout the industry. So just to give you an understanding of how much roads are being used for this current season that's just starting it started last week, end of March, we're estimating there'll be 19 million tons of sugarcane that will be produced by farmers. And if you take the 95% of that, that's 18 million tons of sugarcane that will be transported in KZN and in Mpumalanga to the sugar mills. And if you consider the different types of transport operations, as well as the number of trips and the average distance from the farms to the mills, we're talking around over 25 million kilometers of travel that will be done specifically on sugarcane, and that's loaded. So that's a single way, what we call a single way. It doesn't mean it's going to be double, because not all the trucks are going exactly back to the same farms. So that just gives you a perspective of the mileage that's covered on roads in the sugarcane industry. So what's not in there, what is not in that number of 25 million is obviously the return trip, as previously mentioned, was presented around fertilizer to farms, fuel deliveries, and that's just from an agriculture perspective. When we get to production, in terms of from the sugarcane, we get sugar and molasses. That obviously sugar, whether you're sitting in Cape Town or Lephalale, sugar comes from KZN and Mpumalanga and has to get throughout the country. So that's not even included in that number. So where to from here? We obviously touched on rail infrastructure, and we as the industry are looking towards that, specifically because of the poor conditions of roads and the lack of maintenance. Overall, the whole road safety. I think the same applies in the farm towns and the terrible conditions of roads in the towns, in the rural areas that all these sugar mills actually sustain. There's a whole lot of things that we can obviously talk, but I'm saying that whatever needs to be mentioned, as we mentioned before, I'm not going to repeat it. So that's just a perspective from one commodity, and I'm saying a similar message from all the others. They're all going to speak.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katwa. Perhaps the information from provinces such as Eastern Cape and Western Cape is also included in our report. It's not to say that they do not have similar challenges, but we have specifically, for the purpose of this gathering, focused on the provinces where the problem is really severe. Free State, for example, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and so forth, KZN. But I see Gunther Pretorius is online from the Eastern Cape. Gunther, if you want to share a few thoughts from your side.
Thank you, Chair. From the Eastern Cape side, I think everybody has already provided their inputs, and ours look more or less the same. But from the Eastern Cape side, sorry, can you guys hear me or making a noise?
No, we hear you very clearly.
Some of the provincial affiliates already know that we took the Department of Transport to court already in 2015. And the ruling stated in 2020 that they have to provide us with input into the budget. And they haven't done so in 2020, 2021, and for this current year, because the budget runs from the 1st of April. And obviously, it's already the 4th, and they still haven't given us their thoughts and input into the budget. So we spoke to the lawyers again, and we're compiling our papers together, and we're taking them back. But for interesting sakes, we had a lot of engagements with the department, and to just inform the other provinces, the expanded public's work program is a hell of a concern for us, because the amount of money that gets spent on this program. We didn't know that, but almost half of the Eastern Cape budget gets spent on this program. And if we can get the Auditor General involved here and explaining to us why this is the case, I think it will already solve a lot of problems, because some of the provinces, I think it was Free State, that stated that, no work gets done on these programs, and who's the person that's responsible for this program and to sign off work being done on these programs. Because if we can get someone, independent person to look into this, I think it would already solve many of our problems. But yeah, that's short and sweet from my side. I don't know if everybody's got questions on this, but I think we have spoken to Sandy from Konalu. I think they maybe want to follow the same route.
Thank you, Gunther. And then Yanni Stradom from the Western Cape is also online. I come from the Western Cape, and somebody told me the other day it looks like heaven. Or maybe, am I wrong, Yanni?
Yeah, thanks, Christo. Yeah, thanks, Christo, for putting me on the spot. But we must be careful for statements like that, because it conveys a message that we don't have any problems. For sure, we also have some issues in our rural roads, or with our rural roads, especially gravel roads. But we're in constant discussions with our provincial departments, and especially our Department of Agriculture as well. We just had a meeting last night with our MEC, delivering or discussing his budgets, and infrastructure was also alluded to in that speech of him. So, but yeah, we're also battling with issues. We've seen it through to Agri SA, and it's in the report. And thank you for this initiative, and we hope that it will find its path to the right people, and that we get assistance, because I'm definitely not going to repeat what all the presenters said. We didn't do a presentation today, but we concur and support what was being said here today. Thanks to Agri SA for this opportunity. Thanks, Christo.
Thank you, Yanni. Agri SA has met with the DDG in the Department of Agriculture, who is responsible for rural development, and we have been given an undertaking that that department will get the Department of Transport, COPTA, and other role players around the table in the next couple of weeks, so that we take this issue up directly with the responsible government departments. But as Kulani has alluded to earlier, the President has given this undertaking in his State of the Nation address, that roads will be a priority. We've also emphasized it during our NETLAC discussions with the President, where we've highlighted the issue of roads. And all that we say today is that government hear our plea. Without roads, there cannot be food security. Without roads, there cannot be community development. Without roads, our people will remain in abject poverty. And without roads, we cannot build a South Africa that was promised to all of our people in 1994. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our news conference. Are there any questions? But you're also more than welcome to engage with any of the representatives here, or you are also more than welcome to engage with Tia to get the phone number of Konalu and Free State, who were presented online this morning, as well as the other provinces. But let us quickly hear any questions from the floor.
Susan Morin from Farmers Weekly. Maybe I missed this, but do we have any idea what it will cost to fix our roads now? If Treasury says, here's a check for you, what is the figure? What do we want?
Unfortunately, that we cannot tell you at this point. We haven't done that exercise. Obviously, you can thumbs up, but I suppose this must run into billions. The big question is, do we really need that much money or do we just need a more effective way of dealing with the roads? In other words, making sure that we have the right contractors in place, that there's regular maintenance from the municipality side, that there's greater cooperation between the farming sector and the local municipality to assist with fixing the roads. We have an idea that a lot of money is sort of kept on hold for all kinds of tender reviews. That's our biggest challenge, because we have seen people sharing photos this morning of roads that have been new roads that after a few months or so are in an absolute deplorable state. And that's what we need to address. Money being spent unwisely and landing in the pockets of people that have not delivered the required services. Yes, there's Anne.
How long from now those roads will be fixed? Well, like I've seen them before, they are in a very terrible state. How long it will take the government to fix the roads? And also, that how are you sure that the government won't employ the same people again who, like the same Chigatonians who employed before, those engineers who did the terrible job before? Like, how are you sure you won't employ them again, the same people? How will you make sure of that?
Kubus?
Well, I think that's exactly why we have this conference, or this press conference, is to highlight the issues that we have now. The only way that you can do that is if you have a responsible government and that's responsible to the people, is to hold them to account. So specifically in the province that we ask farmers that on the ground to report back if there's some maintenance being done, how is that progressing, and what is the state, so that we can get a feel in the province what is going on. But I think a lot of the presentations here says that the supervision should be improved and the correct people should be appointed at the right places to exactly do that work. And I think Free State Agriculture also pointed towards, I think the term that was used is scientific, cost-effective engineering approach. So if you have the right people doing the work and do it in that sort of scientific engineering manner, you'll get better results as well.
There's a hand, and let me just Deirdre and then Tia. Deirdre?
I just want to just answer the question of what is the average cost. I mean, the average cost per kilometer for a tar road is 40 million. Now, you just do a calculation, 40 million rand, just for R572, okay, that's 74 kilometers, times that by 40 million. And if we look at the extent of roads in the country, that doesn't just need resurfacing. You times it by 40 million rand per kilometer, that's what you look at. But I think it's also very important that it comes over that there's alternatives as well. And we see that a lot of towns are starting with actually paving roads and using pavers. And that is maybe also something that government could start looking at.
Okay, Nicole, yeah.
Christo, I have a question on the chat box that I'd like to share with you. Felix from Bloomberg would like to know, could Agri SA give us an estimate of the amount the sector is losing every year because of deteriorating infrastructure?
At this point in time, through the research, farmers on average lose approximately 200,000 rand. We've surveyed out of a population of approximately 30,000 farmers. We've extracted what they call in Afrikaans a steekproef, a sample, and that sample amounts to approximately 300 farmers. Now, 300 farmers telling you that they on average lose about 200,000 rand per annum due to trucks that they need to fix, etc. And if you multiply that by the total number of farmers, then it's a substantial amount. And the question is, it's not necessary for farmers to, because farming is a low margin business. Farmers' average profit margin sits in the approximate region of 4.5% to 5% per annum. On top of that, farmers have to take care of their own security. farmers have to take care of a whole lot of other responsibilities besides the taxes that they pay towards the municipality, towards ESCOM, pay their bills, electricity bills. They also pay VAT over from all the purchases they make, and then they obviously pay over pay as you earn. But on top of that, to then lose additional money just to have their trucks maintained or their buckets maintained, and then on top of it to lose lives, workers' lives lost in accidents and things like that. It has an enormous insurance implication as well. And all of these costs at the end of the day make it very difficult for farmers to run a profitable business. And without profitable farming businesses, we run the risk of food insecurity over the long term. Okay. Any questions?
If our roads were working perfectly, does that lower food prices? And do we know by how much?
Sure. Thanks for that. Easy question. So there's a few factors that we need to consider in that regard. I mean, the pricing of food also is dependent on the quality of food in this regard. And one of the things we have noticed is that because of the poor state of the roads, the produce gets to the market in a very unsavory kind of quality, which then does affect on prices. That meant that there are possible solutions that could lower food prices, like probably the rail to rather have transporting food through the rail system that could be more cost effective. However, there's also challenges in that regard. And currently, because of the majority of food that's been transported on the roads, we currently have to then fix that particular situation in that regard. But again, we then have to then consider the price of petrol in that regard, and we know how that story is playing out currently. So yes, definitely the situation on the roads does have a bearing on food prices. There are alternatives that can be explored, but in the current state, I think we need to then maybe just sort out that particular something.
I just want to add to Kulani, I don't think one should try and measure the condition of the roads by rand and cent in terms of food prices, because Lebo also highlighted that it's a social problem. The rural roads are the fabric of the rural area. And even within the municipalities, people need to go to school. Your security needs to be improved. So there's a lot of factors, and I think Lebo alluded to that you also have to consider. And I think it is not just the cost of food, but also these other social issues that's impacting now on the farming communities.
Any comments online? People would like to add any points or comment on the questions that were asked. Jack, I saw you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. We did have a calculation done by proper consulting engineers for us in the beginning of 2020 that said it would cost around 23 billion to get the Free State roads to an acceptable standard. And the largest percentage of that, 20 billion, would be on the roads that are poor to very poor conditions, to reconstruction costs. So the biggest part of the budget is actually to reconstruct roads that have been left to deteriorate into such a bad condition that they have to be rebuilt. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Colleagues, any other questions? May I ask our president, Jaco Minnaar, perhaps to give us a few concluding words? Jaco, if you're still online.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I think it was a very good press conference. I think all the information is really, really useful and something that we can use. The roads is not a short-term solution. I think that's something that we almost realize. It's not you fix a road now and it will continue until eternity to be a good road. It's a constant thing of maintaining the roads, getting the proper infrastructure, the proper training around roads and road infrastructure to get it to the future. And I think that's something that we were lacking the past 10 or 20 years, and that's why I just want to reiterate what Kobus also said, and the whole reason for the press conference today. It's not just economical. The social impact of the roads in the rural areas is huge. When you have to make an economical decision, or where you do market your produce, in terms of the structure of the road, the condition of the road, that really hampers development in the rural communities, and that really hampers what we need in the rural communities to help our poorest of the poor, which live in the rural areas. And I think that's where we need to put our focus on, is if you take away the roads from the rural communities, you take away the livelihoods of the people in the rural communities. And that's something that we really need to stress, and really the message that we need to get out of there. Our conditions of our roads is bad currently. It's deteriorating. So we need to do something to stop the deterioration and get the maintenance and the building of the roads in place. And that's a reason for a press conference like this. And that's a reason that we need the social discussion around roads, around infrastructure in the rural communities going. And Christo, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaco. Thank you to all the media that have attended. Thank you to all of our provincial leaders and CEOs who have been present. Thank you to the staff, Lebu, Kulani, Mel, Tia, Marno, Jean-Ray, for your hard work in putting this together. I trust that this will be the start of a long-term campaign on behalf of the people of South Africa, to have our roads maintained, to have our roads fixed, because, as Jaco said, it's really, it keeps entire societies in contact with markets out there. Also, it not only just brings about economic development, but also social development. On that note, go in peace.